Hello everyone and welcome back to JDD TV. I'm your host Josh. Now, this segment has been in the works for a while. It is going to be called the Group F panel. We have representatives from Croatia, Morocco, and Belgium coming on the channel, and I was hoping to do this big panel where we all sit together and talk about our group leading up to the World Cup. Unfortunately, due to a lot of different events from weather, storms, and of course a time change, it was very difficult for all of us to get together to actually record this. So I'm not saying the future ones won't have us all together, but for right now, I'm going to release each interview separately. So on today's episode, we are going to take a look at the Group F panel featuring Belgium, where we're going to talk about how Belgium is preparing for the World Cup from their point of view, and they're also going to ask us a couple questions from the Canadian perspective. Then we're going to get out the Croatia episode, and then we're going to get out the Morocco episode, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it, and maybe let me know if you like it, this format, or if you want to see it hopefully at one point all come together, so it's four of us together. So without further ado, hopefully you guys are excited. Be sure to drop a like, drop a sub, and let's get into the episode now. All right, everyone, so the long-awaited Group F panel is here, and we are starting things off with the Belgian representative, Karsten. So Karsten, just maybe give us a quick introduction about yourself, maybe how you and why you support Belgium before we really get going here.
So I was born in the U.S. Actually, I was born in Virginia, but my mom is from Belgium, and half my family lives over there currently. So I have dual citizenship in both countries. But I just kind of picked Belgium when I was little, just because it was them in the U.S. and half my family being from there, a lot of them being huge football fans. So it was just the right choice for me, I guess, and it's just how it planned out.
Perfect. So yeah, I appreciate you coming on the panel, and we're going to start things off right away with just taking a look at the window that just ended. So give me your thoughts on the window and talk about maybe some of the results if anyone out there didn't catch how they went down for Belgium.
Yeah, so the first match we had against Wales, obviously ending 2-1. I thought in the first half we actually played very well. Kevin De Bruyne, I thought, was by far the best player on the pitch. I thought he had a masterclass. But you could tell, obviously, Wales aren't the strongest side in Europe right now. I think they're a bit of a shadow of what they were in Euro 2020, let alone Euro 2016. So obviously we played very well in the first half, but coming to the second half, you could see like the whole dynamic around this Belgium team is like for the past year or so, I would say, since our players have aged so much, we're definitely a one half, we dominate one half, whether it be the first or second half, but we can't, put it together for a full match. And you saw this in the UEFA Nations League last year when we were up 2-0 against France in the first half and then capitulated and they scored 3. So Wales obviously scoring with the first goal or, the last goal of the match, but they're scoring their first goal with Kiefer Moore, the 6'5" striker from Bournemouth, towering over Zeno de Bast, who made his debut for the Belgian Red Devils, 19-year-old from Anderlecht. But overall, I thought that match, we played pretty well until the latter stage of the second half, I would say, but not a whole lot we can really learn from that result. The Dutch one as well, very even match, pretty boring, honestly. No one really created a lot of chances. Van Gaal and Roberto Martinez seem to be playing this low line now, especially compared to what we used to play since Vertonghen and Alderweireld have gotten a lot older. We're playing a lot lower line because I think Martinez still wants to use them, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense since we have a lot of good young defenders. But in that match, not a lot of chances being created. De Bruyne, I think, kind of struggled in that match. He created the 2 biggest chances for us, but other than that, he really wasn't effective because we played such a defensive team in that match. Amadou Onana, our youngster from Everton, I don't know if you watched a lot of him. He was fantastic. I mean, he, against pacey players, that's going to be the issue in the World Cup for us. But him in the defensive midfielder role was fantastic. So in that result, obviously, though, Zeno de Bast again was the one marking Virgil van Dijk, who scored the header, which was ultimately the difference. But didn't really play too well in that match either. We didn't play terrible either. It was just more of a kind of meaningless game, it seemed. Roberto Martinez, though, putting Dodi Lukebakio on, which I thought was pretty interesting for Timothy Castagna. He's a youngster who's not really improved a whole lot throughout his Hertha Berlin career in Wolfsburg. I thought he would be like a lot better by now, but it seemed like that was more of a change. Wasn't really tactical, but more of just like, wanted to test him, see if he can make it into the World Cup squad eventually. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a fan of Onana. I saw him a lot playing with Jonathan David at Lille, so he's definitely a big time player. And I think with Axel Witsel aging, he could be a very important player for you guys going forward. But
sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame missing out, obviously, on the Nations League final to the Netherlands. So,
Yeah.
kind of taking a look at the window as an overall. What was your biggest positive that you're taking away from it, and what's your biggest negative?
I would say the biggest positive is, seeing the impact of a player like Kevin De Bruyne and also Eden Hazard. When they're fully healthy, I think Hazard with confidence can play well. That was my biggest positive, especially in the Wales match. I didn't think he was great, but I thought he was effective. The Netherlands match, not so much. I thought he was just drawing fouls. Same with De Bruyne. And I'll also, that kind of correlates with my biggest negative is if those two players, and obviously we didn't have Lukaku this window, he's injured. That's our big three. I mean, if those three players have an off game, I think, we can go from potentially even winning the tournament just with how effective they are offensively to going out in the groups. So, I mean, that was my biggest negative is just like how they can be, if they're shut down, we really don't have a second option, offensively.
Yeah, and I mean, watching it from a Canadian perspective, I mean, if I'm having any hope, which I still think we're heavy underdogs in that match, but it's probably the back line.
For sure.
But the most scary thing is simply Kevin De Bruyne. I mean, the way he can just completely take over a match. Because I agree in that Wales game, he was so good. He's so scary. And if Belgium comes up and they don't even play a good game, it could take a couple moments of magic for him. They could still get a result. Mm-hmm. So I 100% agree with that. But if you're looking at the roster overall, because like you mentioned, Lukaku wasn't there. You tested out Michy Batshuayi up front. If you're going to give like a stock up, stock down for one or two players, who do you think stock rose in this past window, and who do you think stock might have fallen?
So I would say after the second match, Eden Hazard, his stock had to have dropped. There's no way Roberto Martinez can look at that performance and say a player like Leandro Trossard, who has been ridiculous for Brighton this season, or the past few seasons even, when Hazard's been injury prone for Madrid, I think most Belgian fans would agree, like, he should not be a lock to start. This is not the 2018 Hazard. That was arguably the best player in the world, in my opinion. This is a Hazard that's a shadow of himself. And he's lost that quickness. And I definitely think that he's definitely a stock down in that department. I would also say, I mean, in terms of another stock down, no one really played that bad. I would say maybe Zito de Bast. I don't think he was great. He did give up the 2 goals. I think he's good on the ball, but, I think Roberto now looking at him, giving up those 2 goals specifically, which was a bit unlucky, but I think he's now going to look maybe for some other options in that back line to pair with, Vertonghen and Alderweireld. But in terms of stock up, I would say Amadou Onana. I think this guy has to start in some of our matches at the World Cup. Just depends on the matchup, obviously. If we're playing like a quick team like Canada, they have very quick players like Alphonso Davies, of course, and people like that who Onana can get back in time to recover, in which we have a very slow midfield if like Tielemans or Witsel starting together. So definitely him, I would say. And I don't know, for another stock up, I would say honestly, like Alderweireld and Vertonghen for me did. I'll just combine both of those two. They kind of did impress me. Just us playing deeper did help them a lot. When we played higher lines in the past, like we've been awful when those two are in the back because, they've just gotten older. They're not playing for Tottenham anymore. They're playing in the Belgian Pro League, obviously now, and just a lot older. So, but they did impress me just in the way that, and I think they definitely did impress Roberto just in the way they can kind of control the tempo in the back line, just us playing deeper. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, watching the game, I don't know much about De Bast. I'm not going to pretend I did, but I mean, he didn't look overly good. Not like he looked terrible, but when you're so young and you get put in this fold leading up to World Cup and then you're directly at fault for a couple of goals, it's a tough one. So I guess my next question would be leading into this World Cup, taking a look at maybe injury news or roster news. Is there anything that's pretty, I guess, out there? And I mean, one example that's coming to mind for me is Jason Denayer. I mean, this is a pretty quality center back, in my opinion. He was linked to Wolverhampton. This is a player who I thought was probably going to be a starter, and he ended up saying no to the Premier League, and he's gone to the UAE. So is there any big roster updates around that you think would be interesting to touch on, or big injury news like Lukaku?
Yeah, I definitely, that Denayer news that came out only a few days ago, him signing for a club in the UAE, which I think is ridiculous. I agree. I think he's still a very quality center back. He's fast. He's not the best one-on-one, but he's pacey. We kind of need that in the back line. So that was a huge update. I mean, the fact though that this guy was called up, he didn't even have a club, is ridiculous, and he was being called up over some of the younger players. That made no sense to me. Also, some other news. Vertonghen did just move pretty much a few weeks ago to Anderlecht, so it's going to be interesting. He was playing a bit of left back for Anderlecht as well. He's not really playing in that center back role, which I think, might be interesting in terms of like how we line up. But I think actually the biggest injury news, which I was so disappointed not to see, Romeo Lavia. I think he's been one of the best young players in the Premier League this season, obviously scoring against Chelsea. Young player from Southampton, came from Pep Guardiola's City, didn't play a whole lot. They bought him for 14 million from City. Chelsea tries to buy him in the same window for 50 million. That's how good this guy was. I've never seen that before in my life. He was fantastic. Didn't play a bad game for Southampton. Then he gets hurt. He's out for 8 weeks. And now not him being in the squad, like I don't know. I don't know if he gets called up to the World Cup at this point because, hasn't ever been called up to the senior team. He's been fantastic for Southampton, but I don't know. We'll have to see what Roberto does. So, and then one more thing I will say, Dries Mertens as well, moving to Galatasaray. I don't know how this guy still gets called up. Fantastic player in his prime. Obviously, Napoli's all-time leading goal scorer, but, he's not the same player anymore. So.
All right, Karsten, we're throwing it over to you. Ask me one question from Canada's past window that you think would be relevant coming from a Belgian perspective.
Okay. So, in terms of like Canada's attack, do you think like Alphonso Davies' best role in this Canadian team is to play in that, left wing position, or you see him more of do you think his best position would be playing in a more defensive role? Like, do you think he's best suited playing in that attack, trying to create chances? Because obviously he's a fantastic defender as well. So I just want to know your perspective on that.
I mean, going up against Belgium, specifically looking at the way that they played the back three and lack of pace, I would, especially in that game, play him nowhere else besides like a left wing. Okay. Herman's had a lot of different systems. Our midfield's been a little depleted, so we played kind of that 3-4-3 system where he featured as a left wing, but he tucked in a lot more than I would have liked to see because he played mostly as a cam in the game against Uruguay, which pushed both Larin and David as strikers in that 3-4-1-2. But we didn't have Tejan Buchanan. So when I'm looking at Belgium, I'm looking at any opportunity for Canada to get something. I'm hoping whatever the system is, you have Buchanan down one wing, you got Davies down the other, and then maybe Larin, David, or just David up front. Yeah. That is where I think in transition, try to shut Belgium down, try to pray to shut down Kevin De Bruyne, and use the pace of because it was there. I mean, I think it's apparent. I don't think any Belgium fan would disagree. That's where Canada will be deadly. It's using that type of pace because I mean, they're just quick and they're deadly, and that's where the openings can be. So
yeah.
All right, Karsten, the last question we're gonna ask you at each and every time we do this panel before we move on to, because we're starting with Belgium because that's Canada's first game. So we'll start with Belgium. We're gonna move on over to Croatia and then finish with Morocco. But right now, where's your prediction for Belgium, where they're going to finish in this upcoming group stage for Group F?
All right, I'm going to say we still get first, but that's a very, very optimistic suggestion because, like, as I said, if Lukaku or Kevin De Bruyne gets hurt, this prediction will change. I think we get fourth.
Oh, fourth, yeah. I mean,
I we're that bad, or like we can be that bad, yeah.
I like in the back of my mind again, like I'm not overly biased. I'm gonna put Canada in a safe third. For my prediction, just because I'd like to think that they could get something against Morocco, but that is still far from guaranteed. Yeah. And I mean, I personally think if Canada is going to somehow squeak out of the group, it will be because not hopefully, but I mean, like De Bruyne doesn't show up or there's injuries or whatnot, then I think Belgium would be the team to take. But if they're all flying, they're all healthy, it's hard to look past Croatia and Belgium getting out of the group, Karsten. But I appreciate you coming on for this first part of the Group F panel before we transition on over to Croatia. So Karsten, appreciate it, and we'll get you back on soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So that brings us to an end of our very first Group F panel episode. This one was featuring Belgium. We'll get the Croatia one coming out next and then the Morocco one. Let me know what you guys thought, of course, with basically how you liked it, if you would have preferred us all to be together. There's going to be a lot of different moving pieces going forward to try to see what you guys like. It was very difficult to do, to try to get us all together with all those different circumstances, but I will try my best to try to get us do it at least once before the World Cup begins. But without further ado, hopefully you guys did like this, and if you did, as always, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers, friends.